Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be very interesting and very special because it's an interview with Steve Kaufman. Steve is a really famous Canadian polyglot and he knows 20 plus languages, I think. A lot of different languages, and Russian is one of them, and my native language is Russian. He can also speak English, obviously, that's his native language, and Spanish, and I'm currently learning Spanish. Also, on my channel, if you click right here, you will find the first interview with him. And a year later, I decided to take on this challenge again and interview Steve because, guys, first of all, my English has improved a lot, and I'm pretty sure we have a lot more tips to share with you guys when it comes to language learning. So let's begin. Hello, Steve. Welcome to my YouTube channel.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you for inviting me.
Please go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Well, I'm Steve Kaufman. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm 77 years old. I like language learning. I have a YouTube channel called Lingo Steve. Together with my son, we created a website called Link, L-I-N-G-Q, for language learning, which is where I learn languages. And right now I'm learning Persian and Arabic at Link.
Wow, cool. Yeah, so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Actually, guys, I already have an interview with Steve on my YouTube channel, and today we're filming another one a year later. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about language learning and especially about accents, and obviously accents in English. So Steve, a lot of people on my channel always ask me, oh, Veronica, I'm really insecure about my accent. Like, what should I do? Should I work on my accent? Should I change my accent in any way? Because I feel like every time I talk to a native speaker, they are always going to be judging my English just because I don't sound like them.
Okay.
So what would you
I mean, it depends,
here?
I guess, to some extent where you live. I understand that if someone lives in North America and they speak with an accent, they may be self-conscious about the fact that they have an accent. But in reality, I mean, I live in Canada, but there are so many people with accents that most people aren't that concerned. They may have some curiosity about, what is your accent? Are you French? Are you Bulgarian? Are you, whatever. I lived in Japan for 9 years. I speak Japanese quite well, or even French, I speak quite well. But people will occasionally ask me, like, where are you from? So what? It doesn't bother me in the slightest. What matters is how well do you use the language? How well do you structure your phrases? How, do you use the correct word? The word that is most appropriate for that situation. And these are things that we acquire gradually through a lot of exposure to the language, hearing people use the language in a certain way, and we start to pick up on it, and so we start to speak in a more natural way. And I have had many interactions with people in Canada or elsewhere in the world who are German or Swedish or French or Chinese or whatever. And they use the language very well, and they have, in some cases, quite a strong accent.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you because the reason why I really wanted to talk about this question with you is because I used to be that person who would always be like, oh, I really need to get rid of my Russian accent because I was very insecure about it. I was like, I don't want people to think like the first thing they have in their head when they're talking to me, is like, oh, she's from Russia, or oh, she has an accent. So that's why the motivation for me to improve my accent wasn't very positive. It was like, oh, I'm embarrassed of my accent. And it took me years to come to terms with the fact that I will always have an accent as a non-native speaker who learned English as an adult. I will always have this like little trace of something, and people will always be like, okay, yeah, she's not from here, she's not a native speaker, but I can't really place her. Yeah.
Exactly. I would do that with you. You speak so well. I certainly wouldn't identify your accent as Russian. I said, geez, I wonder where she's from. She's not native speaker, but she speaks so well. I wonder where she's from. Is she from, I don't know,
Yeah.
Brazil?
I want to interrupt this amazing interview real quick and tell you guys about the best product that will help you create beautiful diagrams and charts. I'm pretty sure when you learn English or do work, you have to make presentations and organize your studying. And Max by Wondershare will help you do just that. You can use this tool online or download the app on your computer. When you go to their website, you can choose between thousands of professional templates like basic diagrams, flowcharts, mind maps, organizational graphs, and forms. Okay, to show you guys how Max works, I'm just gonna go to General and choose Mind Maps because this is something that a lot of people love creating. And here, I want to click on Be a Good Teacher because it's an amazing template you guys can use to create a mind map about being a good student, for example. So as you can see, the template is 100% customizable. All you need to do is click on some of the icons right here and choose what you want to do. For example, if you want to change the text, you just click on text, then you can obviously change the font, you can change the size, you can highlight the text and choose the font color. Also, you can obviously change what your mind map looks like, so change the design of it by clicking on this fill icon and choosing a different color. For example, I want it to be, let's choose this red color. And now I can change the text color to, for example, black, and now it looks a lot better. As you can see, guys, on their website, there are so many templates. So whatever it is you need to do for your studying, for your work, you will definitely be able to find a chart or a diagram you can use to then create something unique. The reason why I'm such a huge fan of mind maps is because they have been proven to help you guys remember and recall information, boost your creativity, and make complex ideas easier to understand. So if you want to plan better and organize your work, make sure to use the link below to download Max completely for free. And now, guys, let's go back to the interview and continue talking about language learning. You also mentioned what's important is how non-native speakers can use words in English. And I think a couple of days ago, my Russian friend actually asked me Veronica, I learned all of these words, but I'm not sure if I can actually use them when I talk to a native speaker. How can I make sure that if I use all of these new words that I learn, it's gonna sound all right? Obviously they are gonna understand me, I understand that, but is it gonna sound weird? Are they gonna be okay, we don't really speak like this? How can I make sure that I'm using the right words?
You can't.
Yeah.
It's a simple question. The thing is, with enough exposure, with enough listening and reading and speaking with people, your brain will gradually develop better and better habits in time. It's a bit like AI, the automatic translation or automatic, transcriptions or translations has improved so much because of the vast quantity of data that has become available to these engines that then make the system better. It's the same with language. Your brain is absorbing all this data. It's absorbing the language spoken by native speakers, sometimes incorrectly, and then the brain will remove that because it doesn't come up that often. But it develops better and better habits over time. By the way, that reminds me, I had a comment on my YouTube channel when I did a video about Russian, saying that one of the difficulties in Russian is verbs of motion, which is true because, it is. Ехать, ездить.
Yeah.
And so this person says, oh, that's ridiculous. We Russians never ask ourselves the question of, which is the correct verb of motion. Of course not. You've had millions and millions of hours of reading words and stuff.
Not.
Your brain has figured it out all by itself. But the poor foreigner trying to learn Russian hasn't had millions and millions of hours and stuff like that. So it's more difficult for them. And so now, whether the explanation about verbs of motion helps or not, I have my doubts. It helps a little, but ultimately you still have to fall back to the idea of you just have to get so much exposure to the language that the brain starts to develop good habits.
Yes, I completely agree with you here because when people ask me oh, explain this expression to me, explain how native speakers use it. yes, I'm going to explain it to you, but exposure is really going to help you a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
And when people ask me this question is, oh, how can I use this word? Like, where can I use it? Okay, I'm going to explain it to you. But again, if you practice English a lot, if you listen a lot, if you read a lot, you will kind of naturally understand how to use all of these words and where to use them.
Yeah, and it may be that if you
Yeah.
use a word incorrectly, but you're talking about a certain subject,
Mm-hmm.
the person you're speaking with may actually come back with that word or a similar word or a related word. And very often you can pick up
Ooh,
on things
yeah.
just by listening to other people. You may forget it again, but all the things that we forget, they're still somewhere in our brain. And you may come across it again and forget it again,
Yeah.
but then eventually that becomes a part of your language habits. So we just have to be patient.
Some of the idioms are so outdated, like people don't use them
I
anymore,
know.
but some of them, yeah, they're very useful to know. So I would be like, oh, this person is, especially if like this person is my age, this person just used this idiom and like they're talking to me. So it's kind of like this cue for me to realize that, okay, Veronica, you should memorize this like idiom, or they actually do use this idiom. Yeah, just noticing all those patterns and being an active listener when you
I
talk to
totally
people.
agree. And, all these language books, not just for English, for Chinese, for any other language, here are a list
Mm-hmm.
of, 50 idioms that are going to make your language sound more sophisticated. You haven't got a chance. Haven't got a chance of learning
Oh,
those.
yeah.
You don't know which ones are actually, you
Yeah.
don't believe half those idioms are used. You don't know. However,
Yeah.
when you have a conversation with someone, anything that you're getting from that conversation is more likely to stick. It may not stick, but it's more likely to stick. It's high resonance, it's relevant, it's you connecting with another human being. That's a great learning opportunity. A list of idioms in a course somewhere, that's not going to stick.
And talking about grammar, because this is usually, for example, even just a question from me, because I'm learning Spanish right now, like at the very
Hmm.
beginning of my journey. And when I just look at all the grammar I have to learn, I feel a little bit scared because I'm like, oh my God, there's so much grammar I don't know. So, how do you think a language learner should approach grammar when they first start learning the language?
Well, I think Spanish, as a non-native learner of both Spanish and Russian, or Slavic languages.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't just say Russian, because all the Slavic languages have very similar grammar, and they're very complicated,
Yep,
very complicated.
very
To
similar.
me, much more complicated
Yeah,
than Spanish. However, Spanish
for
Spanish has
sure.
complicated grammar, but English has complicated grammar in sort of a strange kind of funny way. And I would get myself the
Hmm.
smallest Spanish grammar book, the thinnest. Read it once and forget it. Read it and forget it.
Okay.
Don't ever deliberately try to learn any grammar rule, because you won't remember it. Then you need to get exposed to as much of the language as possible. And that exposure, I refer back to Link, it's just words. You got to learn words. Words, words, words. Listen, read, words, words, words. Now you
Yep,
become more and more curious
exactly.
about the grammar. And once you are curious and you then go back to that little thin grammar book
Hmm.
and read it again, more things are going to stick. Every language has ridiculous stuff, has junk code. Every
Yep.
language, because languages develop naturally. And if you focus on comprehension,
Hmm.
more important than correct production of the language, and if you focus, therefore, on vocabulary, and when you do produce the language, focus on communication. And if you are able to
Hmm.
communicate with people and you understand what they say, as we were saying earlier, you're going to get all of this feedback, input from the people you're speaking to. And so then gradually your brain is going to develop the proper language habits. But it takes time.
Yeah. And this is actually something that's happening to me in Spanish right
Hmm.
now. I find myself noticing certain grammar patterns even when I don't know them. I'm like, oh, this thing has been like bugging me this whole
Right,
week, for example. I've been seeing it like over and over and over again. I'm like, okay, it's time
right,
for me to look it up. I feel like it's a grammar thing. I don't know what it is yet,
right.
so it's time. Like, it's
And
time
it's
for me
so
to
easy to
look
look
it
things
up.
up now. If
Yeah,
you're curious about conjugation of a verb in Spanish, you just
exactly.
Google it and you get the whole thing.
Hmm.
And you should also accept the fact that you can look it up,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean you've done it, that you've learned it. You're going to forget it again. And even So you just have to keep
Yeah.
doing that. But it's so easy today.
Exactly.
It's like it's so much better than 50 years ago when I was learning languages. You can look anything you want up.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you, talking about you and like when you're learning languages. So, for example, for me, the reason why I started learning English and Spanish too is because of necessity. Like, I started learning English because everyone nowadays kind of has to speak English. That's what people say. And because of my job, because of my university, I started learning Spanish because I moved to Mexico. What about you? Because you're learning and you can speak so many different languages. Obviously, there should be another reason, not just because it's like necessary. It was necessary for you to learn a certain language.
So, I mean, the first language is French. I had a professor who got me very interested in French civilization. I went to France, did my university training there, joined the Canadian government. I was sent to Hong Kong to learn Mandarin Chinese. That was my job, so I learned Mandarin. Then we moved to Japan, so I learned Japanese because I lived there. Once you realize that language learning is fun, that you can do it, it takes time, then you want to do it again.
Yeah.
And with every language I learned, like French or Chinese or Japanese, you discover so much about those people and that culture. So that place comes alive for you. I was watching,
Yeah.
Ukrainian TV, and half the people speak Russian, half the people speak Ukrainian. I can't understand the Ukrainians. Well, I better learn Ukrainian so I can understand what they're saying. Persian and Arabic, it's the Middle East. I know so little about that region of the world. Arabic, Persian, Turkish, those three languages, that's that world. And it's a fascinating world. And you realize that we have so little about that part of the world in our school system. I don't know in other countries, but in Canada, we hardly know anything about them.
Yeah. So it's basically like curiosity plus a challenge for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
A
you're
challenge.
like, oh, exactly. Yeah.
And there is a sense of achievement. You start into
Oh,
Persian
yeah.
or Arabic, you can't read all the little squigglies, you can't understand, it's all zero, like noise. And after a while, wow,
For sure.
I understand. I can get a podcast and I can understand half of it.
Yeah, so thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for the
Okay,
interview.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for answering all of my questions. It was very interesting.
Well, happy to do it. Very enjoyable.
Yeah,
I look forward to doing it again.
yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
In Spanish.
In Spanish
Okay,
one
bye.
day. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Okay, I think that was an amazing interview. I definitely had a great time chatting to Steve about language learning, and I think his view on learning grammar was definitely something unorthodox, something that many people will be like, okay, maybe I don't agree with you, but I'm gonna try. And guys, please try this. Don't think that you should always be learning grammar, that grammar is so important, because unfortunately this is what our education system is based on right now. It's based on learning grammar all the time, but unfortunately this is not really how you learn a language. And this is a tip from a polyglot, from a person who has already learned multiple foreign languages. If you want to check the interview on Steve's channel with me, where we share even more tips about language learning, where Steve asks me more personal questions about me, make sure to click the link in the